Hola, muy buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a Congreso Futuro 2025, el evento que en nuestra 14ª versión nosotros estamos ahora haciendo la interrogante de ¿qué humanidad queremos ser? Y en este espacio, uno de nuestros grandes invitados internacionales es el profesor Denis Noble, que británico, fisiólogo y persona clave en el desarrollo de los estudios en los sistemas de regulación de los sistemas biológicos y fisiología cardíaca. El profesor Noble ha desarrollado el primer modelo computacional de células cardíacas y ha sido el pionero en avances en la simulación de procesos biológicos a través de la computación. Él también es autor del libro The Music of Life, la música de la vida, donde ha propuesto una visión integrativa de la biología que desafía el determinismo genético, enfatizando la complejidad y la adaptabilidad de los sistemas orgánicos vivos. Professor, thank you so much for accepting this invitation, for being part of Congreso Futuro 2025.
It's an honor.
Wonderful. Have you been here before in Chile?
Oh yes, I came about 30 years ago to go to a meeting down in Pucón. I just came through Santiago, so no chance to see Santiago.
But I think in these 30 years, a little bit of Santiago has changed.
A lot has changed, yes, absolutely so. It's a pleasure to be back.
Wonderful, thank you, and thank you for accepting our invitation. Let me share a little bit about Denis Noble and his work. Déjenme compartir un poco acerca del trabajo de Denis Noble durante su carrera. Su trabajo que ha rompido paradigmas en disciplinas tanto como la genética, fisiología y la computación biológica, ha ofrecido una profunda perspectiva que interconecta la vida con la condición humana. So my first question is, in your work, you emphasize the complexity and adaptivity of living organisms and living systems. How do you think this perspective can help us to understand better the richness of humanity and its capacity for creativity and resilience?
Thank you. That's a very important question indeed. Because if we really believe that we are born selfish and that we have to teach our children to be cooperative and altruistic, you get one view, and it leads, I can assure you, to depression. People feel sometimes that the idea that somehow these things inside us are determining what we do. The alternative view, which is the one that I favor, which is that we are adaptable and that we can actually control our genetic material and how it is expressed, leads to the very richness of humanity. It is precisely what gives us responsibility, our agency, our ability to choose. It's as simple as that.
For you, what will constitute richness for humanity?
Well, it matters enormously because, you see, the great richness of humanity is our creativity.
Okay.
Just think of our music, our poetry, our novels, and all the other forms of the arts that we create. But science too. Science is a creative process. We are not just simply working out what is the case. We're also trying to put it into language that it can explain to some degree what we have discovered. That also is a highly creative activity. So, as I see it, the richness of humanity lies in this creativity.
This creativity creates a more complex system of interaction between humans, right?
Absolutely so.
So what lessons can we learn from this complexity of biological systems and also the creativity to foster a more interconnected and harmonious society?
Well, we desperately need harmonization in our societies. Particularly in recent times, polarization has become almost a feature of human society, and I deeply regret that. We need to respect each other. We need to get back to courteous interaction. I did a debate with my main opponent 2 years ago, Richard Dawkins, author of The Selfish Gene. You can find it on the internet. What you'll see is that both of us were extremely courteous to each other. We had a good debate. We told each other you're wrong. That's good. But we need also to respect those who disagree with us. And that forms a harmonious society. We need to get that back.
That's right. That's true. With our current climate in the world, not only climate change but also
Indeed
political
so.
climate.
Because it matters. The future of humanity hinges on whether we can produce a greater harmony amongst ourselves. If we can't do that, then those who are professing and explaining that we are doomed will win anyway. We need to win over them.
Wonderful. That's true. That's true. In your book, The Music of Life, you describe biology as an interplay of systems rather than a linear process. How can this integrative vision inspire new approaches to addressing global challenges such as climate change or public health crisis?
Well, first of all, to deal with climate change, that needs a very deep understanding of some very complex processes. Climate change is almost like biology because it is an interaction between us as humans and what we do to the earth and the reaction of the earth to what we are doing to it. And I think that an understanding of that might produce a better response to the whole problem of climate change. But the difficulty there, of course, is that the processes that produce that are actually catching up with us really quite rapidly, while the reactions in trying to deal with those problems, to move to a more humane way of running society and running our energy consumption, that is difficult because political decisions are usually short-term. We need long-term vision and sustained attempt to bring down what we're damaging the earth with. That is largely our consumption of energy. We have to find ourselves a way to be more economic.
And to create a more harmonic...
a more harmonic society is precisely what we need. Exactly so. And a society that is built on the biological idea that genes have to cooperate and with everything else in the body, not just the other genes, in order for there to be anything at all. That tells us that basically biology is about cooperation. That's what produces integrated cells like us, you and me. And that's what we need to get back to.
Going behind the mention that you said about genes, the idea of life as more than a change of genes challenges the traditional narrative of genetic determinism. What role do environmental and evolutionary factors play in shaping our capacity to develop knowledge and meaning? We are being mentioning climate change, for example,
yes,
and that is a different kind of environmental stress for all the biological system in the world. So, what will happen? What's your approach to this question?
Well, first of all, these are huge challenges. Climate change itself is obviously a huge challenge, but much more than that, it's also a huge challenge to deal with the aging societies we've now got. We have not, through investing in the genome, produced all the cures that were promised. We were promised it would be within 10 years of sequencing human genomes. It hasn't happened, it can't happen, and we now know why it can't happen. We need to change tack to a large degree to deal with that problem as well. So it's not just climate change, it's also the fact that we, all of us, as younger people, I'm an old person now, but those of us who are younger are having to support a growing population of old people with very complex diseases. We haven't found the cures for those. We can't find those cures in genetics. We'll have to look elsewhere. So we need quite a big shift in our priorities, in what we fund, what we look to bring us out of what is, I describe it as an impasse, a block in the way we move forward. We need to get out of that as quickly as we can.
Do you think that shift of paradigm is achievable in the next decades for humanity? What is your opinion?
Yes. Do I think it's achievable? It's absolutely necessary. If we don't achieve the change in approach over the next decade or two, we can effectively look to a situation in which we cannot even be sure that our species will survive. Now, it may be, you could say, that doesn't matter. Something will. Maybe the octopus will take over. I don't know. But, you know, something deep inside me wants humanity to survive. And we're so good at it. We have been brilliant at cooperation, at creativity. Just think of our music, our poetry, our literature. You know, we need that to continue. So it matters to me, at least, and I hope it matters to my listeners, to make sure that this continues. But that's going to need quick action over the next decade or so.
Wow. I love a little bit stressful your message, but is the truth basically to this condition of that currently we are as a humanity.
Yeah.
My next question is, from your perspective, is the human capacity for developing knowledge primarily a product of genetic evolution, or does rely more on cultural or environmental factors?
Yes,
how do these
very good
elements
question
interact?
indeed. The extent to which we are, as evolving species, dependent upon the changes in our genes or the changes in our environment. I have a little formula which I think sums this up. Genes alone, 0. Environment alone, 0. The two together, 100%. It's a false idea to somehow divide between the two. That's not how it works. It's an interaction between the two. Our environment changes us through epigenetic changes. In turn, that changes eventually the genes. And the genes, as they change what we do to the environment. So it's an interactive process. We can't just divide it up and say it's 80% this, 20% that. That doesn't work. We should stop thinking like that.
During your career, you were a pioneer in the analysis of genetic coding and genetic code through computation. And you've witnessed how technology transformed our understanding of life. We have saw this shift in the last 50, 40 years, where all the computational power passed from a few bytes to now have terabytes of information and processing. How do you see advancement in computational modeling shaping of exploration of humanity's role in the greater ecological and cosmic systems? The power of computation that we are now developing as a humanity. How do you think? Where do you think it leads us as a species?
Right. Very deep and complicated question. Let me see what I can do with it. First of all, computation and reconstruction of the biology of systems has undergone enormous changes over my lifetime. I first modeled the heart and its rhythm 65 years ago, in 1960, as a graduate student at University College London. What I was doing then with a very primitive valve computer is almost nothing compared to what can be done today. But there are dangers from this too. Yes, we can now do much more than I've been doing during my career. The power of technology that we've got is absolutely immense. But waiting in the wings is the old question. If that can produce intelligent processes, we call it artificial intelligence, of course, that is a challenge in a sense to us. I've one idea which I think puts this into perspective. That AI process is largely based on silicon computers. That's a crystal. We are not. Our biology is water. And water is continually jiggling around. That is the origin of our creativity. We have so much variation within the very cells of our body and at various levels of the body that is what is responsible for our great creativity. And so I think there's a positive message here. First of all, it's going to be extremely difficult to reproduce us. I challenge the computer people and I say, you make computers out of water and then I'll listen to you. Until you do that, I don't think you're serious.
Estamos con el profesor emérito de la Universidad de Oxford, Denis Noble. Pero ahora vamos a hacer un breve alto y al regreso continuamos con esta interesante conversación por el motivo de esta nueva edición de Congreso Futuro. Estamos de vuelta ya en la entrevista con el profesor Denis Noble en esta 14ª versión de Congreso Futuro, año 2025. Professor, continuing our conversation, our discussion, many disciplines, astronomy, history, biology, contribute to our understanding of the existence. What unique insights can system biology offer when woven together with these different perspectives?
Very good question indeed, because these different perspectives arise from interdisciplinarity. And that means that actually we're not, as scientists, working in little silos. This biology, this chemistry, this physics, this astronomy, this I don't know what. It goes on, doesn't it? We're now looking at a time in science when there is very much more interaction between those various disciplines. I am both a mathematician, a biologist, and an evolutionary biologist. I'm all three of those. I don't distinguish my work as being relevant just to one or other of those. I think we need more people who are capable of this interdisciplinarity that enables integration. You know, my own ideas on multi-level biology, we determining what our genes are doing as part of it, all of that comes from studying relativity in physics.
Wow.
It may seem a long way away. It isn't, because the same relativity of causation matters in biology as you investigate what happens at a high level, determining what happens down at the level of genes and molecules. So we need the interdisciplinarity, and our universities should teach that much more than they do.
You mention interdisciplinarity of knowledge. Every country has his own curricula, but I would love to ask you do you think schools, the primary and secondary education, teach correctly biology and natural science?
Very good question indeed. Do the schools teach the right biology and the right science? I lecture by invitation to quite a lot of high schools in England particularly. And the message is very clear. Professor Noble, when are we going to have the textbooks that tell your story? They don't at the moment. Those textbooks are wrong. I've documented the extent to which major textbooks teaching biology and particularly evolutionary biology are not correct. I'm part of a project now to put that right, to create the courses that will enable people in schools and universities to learn why we made big mistakes over the last 80 years and what we should be learning and teaching our children in the future. So I'm doing what I say needs to be done.
For example, accepting our invitation to be here in Congreso.
Indeed so, yes.
Yes. One person asked me if it is the correct version of evolution, if it's the correct version of evolution is taught in schools.
Well, unfortunately, what is taught in schools today is exactly what was taught to me 70 years ago.
Wow.
when I was an 18-year-old student. It's wrong. Full stop. It's wrong on many things. It's wrong on the idea that it's only genes that evolve. And our bodies don't play any role in that. Just not true. Our bodies communicate to the germline, that's the sperm and eggs of future generations. And if they do that in response to an environmental change that persists, that also persists. It goes down the generation. That is how we evolve. And we're doing that more rapidly now through two things. Epigenetic evolution, which is a quick response to environmental change, and cultural evolution. Because believe me, cultural evolution now matters, particularly in the evolution of species like us. But even in other organisms, apes, dogs, cats, you will find it all there too. They've got their own kinds of culture. Culture matters as well as epigenetics.
A really ethereal question. How education can influence evolution?
How?
Education?
Ah.
Because
right, yes. I think that's a deep question, actually, because if we are taught incorrectly about evolution, this will feed into future generations. We've been in this cycle for at least 80 years, ever since the modern synthesis of evolutionary biology was formulated by Julian Huxley way back in 1942. So we've been through this cycle many, many, many times. We need to break it. How best to put this? I don't want to criticize those who formulated the modern synthesis. They did the best they could at that time in 1942. But for goodness sake, we've moved on enormously since then. The amount of biological knowledge now that we have is what makes that synthesis be insufficient to tell the correct story of evolution. That's why we need to revise the textbooks or produce alternative ways of teaching our children.
Have you found in this new era of over-information, the hyperconnection, ways to teach this new form, the correct ways of the biology of evolution? Do you have an experience?
Yes, indeed. I have indeed found the way to do it. I'm part of a project now to produce video courses. How many students now read big, thick textbooks? Video courses, you can go out there on YouTube, produced by a highly respected group of biologists. That's what we now need, and I'm deeply involved in a project to make sure that that happens over the next 2 years.
Wonderful. And where is this available? Where can you find these videos?
Well, first of all, if you look on the website, Third Way of Evolution, it's just the Third Way of Evolution, one word.
Okay.
And then you'll find many of the books that have been written by more than 100 scholars and researchers in evolutionary biology, which will tell you what the new trends are. But in addition to that, you'll also find, particularly on my own website, denisnoble.com, many videos that already teach what we hope those courses will also teach. That's why I get invitations from schools in England and want to know more and know that the textbooks they're learning from are not correct.
We've been talking a lot about interdisciplinary at the beginning of this interview. And also we've been talking about a lot about culture and their components, knowledge, education, science, but also arts. During your experience, have you have approach on culture, arts to be a part of disciplinary a discipline as a science?
Do I have a point of view on how culture and the arts should be integrated into science? The viewers of this need to know I am a musician too.
Really?
I run a music group that reproduces the fantastic songs of the troubadours back in medieval times. We sing it. We sing it in their language. I do what I preach. I explore the arts as much as I explore science. And we need more of that. And you know, that used to be the case. Was Leonardo da Vinci just an engineer? No. And you go through some of the greatest scientists that the world has known. Einstein played the violin. Well, good luck to him. And many more of us should do that.
This new approach of knowledge should be interdisciplinary because it gives you tools from different areas of the knowledge, right?
That's right. And indeed, you know, another thing that matters, coming to culture again, and particularly in a country like this, which doesn't have English as its main language, languages also matter. One of the greatest decisions I made long ago when I was very young was to make sure I became bilingual. I became totally fluent in French. I've since lectured in 6 different languages.
Whoa.
Now, why does that matter? I have discovered that that's taught me much better than being a monoglot, much better what metaphor really means. The big mistake in the selfish gene is the metaphor. It's not true. Now, I appreciated that quite early on in thinking about it, because when you look at the way in which different languages emphasize the meaning of this nuance in a word compared to that nuance, you begin to understand that language is not so simple as you might think. If you're a monoglot, you won't even consider these questions. Becoming bilingual, trilingual, that makes a huge difference. You people here in Chile, you've got Spanish as your main language, but most of you also know some English, and that's great. We all need to be multilingual, I think.
Professor, your book, The Music of Life, why it's called like that? Why do you choose that title?
Well, The Music of Life's title was chosen because I am a musician. You see, I naturally use the metaphors of music. I say in the first chapter of that book, the genome is really just a CD with digital information on it. Really so, because all that happens when our genomes are used is it gets read. What happens to the data on a CD? Well, maybe you don't have CDs, but you'll have streaming, and it'll all be digital. You see, the point is obvious. You come up to that particular metaphor naturally if you're a musician as well as a scientist. Later on, I asked the question in the book, who was the composer? Well, it was evolution. But that then gives you a new view over the question of what evolution really is. If it's the composer, then does it have some sort of direction? The standard biologists would say, no, Denis Noble is completely wrong on that. There's no direction to evolution. My goodness, there is. Every time there's been a big transition in evolution of our species, new possibilities have arisen. That is directional. That means that particularly the French evolutionary biologist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who is largely ridiculed in today's society, at least in English-speaking communities, was absolutely correct when he said there is a direction to life. That direction is increasing complexity. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? It's exactly what has happened. So I would say that interdisciplinarity, and particularly the appreciation of the use of language in different languages, gives you huge insights, and I've used that enormously in The Music of Life and in my other books.
I invite all our viewers to read The Music of Life from Professor Noble. They're really interesting and really well written. Professor, my last question for you.
Yes.
Following the event, Congreso Futuro, my question is, what kind of humanity do we want to be from your perspective and career?
This is the deepest philosophical question. You know, philosophers from thousands of years ago have wondered, who really are we as humans? I think it's up to us to define that, because the directionality, the purpose in us is created by us. If you teach people that, they will use it. So we should stop teaching people, you're just a bunch of genes, you're created by them, body and mind. We should instead say, no, you have agency, you have creativity, cultivate that creativity, and then we will define what humanity really is. Humanidad is more than just a bunch of genes.
Wonderful, Professor. And thank you so much for your time with us.
My pleasure.
Muchas gracias también a los espectadores por ver esta entrevista con el profesor emérito de la Universidad de Oxford, profesor Denis Noble. Les recordamos que esta y otras conversaciones las podrán encontrar en las distintas plataformas de TV Senado, y todos los paneles y charlas de Congreso Futuro pueden verlos en los canales oficiales, redes sociales y el sitio web principal, www.congresofuturo.cl. Muchas gracias y nos vemos.